Hello, I'm Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about team building for Yusuke. So, Yusuke is essentially the latest craze or phase to hit Puzzle and Dragons in North America because he combines the ability to form an incredibly powerful team as well as being a stellar sub. Furthermore, the fact that we are able to actually trade in for him through the monster exchange system means that he's going to be one of the most easily accessible leaders in the game. And at this point in time, my friends list has probably at least 100 plus people with a Yusuke showing. So he is going to be quite accessible. So if you are fortunate enough to either roll him or actually trade in for him, you're going to have a good time or easy time finding friends. So the purposes of this article is to examine his strengths and weaknesses to help us better build an efficient team for playing through challenging or endgame content. Now, there is no perfect team, I feel, nowadays, because it's really a matter of just countering the various mechanics from dungeon to dungeon. Like an Arena 4 setup will possibly differ from, say, an alt arena setup because you need different mechanics or different active skills or inherits to counteract those spawns. So it's best, I feel, to examine all the cards as a whole to see where they can fit into their strengths and weaknesses, and that's what this video and article will be discussing. So I do have at least one sample gameplay of basically me soloing through Arena 4, floors 23 to 25. Like the previous floors, they are tedious, they are annoying, but at least they are manageable overall. So it's just more so showcasing how you deal with the final few floors. If you wish to watch it, you can take a look there. I'm not going to watch a video while recording a video. That's a little strange. Will I get twice the amount of YouTube revenue? I don't know. But regardless, Yusuke at a glance. So Yusuke's active skill basically changes the board to water and light orbs, as well as unlocking them. Unlocking the orbs first, then changing, as well as one turn of haste. So this is only a 13 turn cooldown. So this is incredibly efficient overall because, well, a bi-elemental board changer is normally 12 turns. And even just adding in haste is worth it, but getting haste and the orb unlock is incredibly powerful. His leader skill enables him to form a 2.25 times health and recovery, as well as 225 times attack team. So he's incredibly durable and hits amazingly hard. Furthermore, he has double 7 combo awakenings as well as the void damage penetration. So he's able to dish out spectacular amounts of damage on his own. Of course, with the friends leader, it's also going to do large amounts as well. So the subs you bring are obviously important, but the fact that Yusuke himself is possibly hitting hard enough to sweep most content is quite meaningful. Now, he does have a multi-component leader skill, which does provide some forms of damage control. Not the greatest, but at least there's some forms. And he is able to basically orb change his way to victory. Like, you are able to make a very mono, or technically you're using 2 elements, but you say you're using light orb changers. You can make quite a powerful burst potential because, let's say we compare him to something like Riku, who has 225 times attack. Well, both of them have the same attack multiplier, but Riku hits significantly less hard because he has a rainbow requirement, so your damage is naturally diluted, whereas Yusuke can just push hard for mono or bicolor orb changes. So his active skill is basically a built-in burst. You're hitting 50 million or so almost per card if you have a reasonably distributed board. So you are dealing spectacular amounts of damage, and that is important. Furthermore, the fact that he has offensive awakenings means he's actually dealing damage at the same time, unlike Riku. Riku does nothing. It's just his subs that carry the team and the strong leader skill. So just keep this in mind when you're actually team building or even considering exchanging for Yusuke, which I do recommend. He also has balance typing, which means he can accept any killer Leighton, which is important for basically customizing him to counteract certain spawns that are common and or dangerous. In terms of cons, he does have lower weighted stats, which is a bit of a problem because they are not multiplied as high as other cards, and he is vulnerable to gravities. May seem kind of niche, but the thing is, gravities are becoming more prevalent, and especially if there are gravities that do 100% of your current health. It doesn't matter how much health you have, you're going to suffer. Same with 99% gravities. You're going down to 1%. You might have a tough time healing back up. And that's why something like Edward has a bit of an advantage over Yusuke, because he can survive gravities naturally. So, Edward, Diablos, and Yusuke are essentially the top 3 leaders in PAD. Diablos basically pairs with other people to make them better, and Edward is good with himself, and Yusuke is great with himself. And it's at least worthwhile looking at why they are strong leaders. So, Diablos is 7x6, and we kind of understand why he's great. He has one of the highest multipliers, or maybe the highest for 7x6 teams, so he's great there. But Edward and Yusuke play quite similarly. So Edward's strength is that he can hasten or skill charge his own active up, so he gets it a bit more often than compared to Yusuke. He does have that innate durability because of the passive damage reduction, but Yusuke has a higher attack multiplier to compensate. So basically Yusuke is a more offensive Edward. So if you're playing through content where you need higher amounts of damage, Yusuke might be a stronger option. But if you're playing through something that you don't need as explosive damage, but you are required to dance or stall through problematic encounters, Edward's a little stronger because the damage reduction component gives him more effective health and protects him better against gravities. So Yusuke's 225 times attack is quite spectacular and is allowing him to deal massive amounts of damage. And nice benefit of Yusuke is that his active skill kind of solves lots of problems for teams. It's the board changer, so you have a kill board. You also have high enough multiplier to basically pump out large amounts of damage. So from these two screenshots here, I made a 3x3 box, and I think I hit like 9 or so combos, and I'm dealing like 60 plus million damage basically per card. That's a spectacular amount of damage. And I didn't use a gemstone. And that's important because I did not actually burst my way through. And basically that is enough to basically sweep basically anything in the game, provided. And he's also hitting for that box damage, so he is not going to get voided out. Now, that's obviously a bit of an extreme example where I use Yusuke's active. But let's examine this image here. So I only made one light combo, and there was 8 combos in total. There were 2 water, I believe, and each Yusuke is hitting for about 5.9 million damage. So the other double 7 combo cards are hitting actually a bit higher, except for Cotton, because they have higher attack value, because remember, Yusuke is a little on the lower end. But you kind of get the general idea. Like, I'm hitting basically like 30 plus million damage easily. Wait, well, it's probably like 40 plus million. Math is hard. But the point of the matter is you're dealing so much damage with just regular activation that you're going to sweep so much content with relative ease. And that is great because that does lessen the need for like burst damage inherits. Now, the double 7 combo and the void damage penetration is important. So Yusuke has a personal 4 times damage when hitting 7 or more combos, so that is great. But he is one of the few void damage penetration cards available that have offensive awakenings. So void damage penetration cards, or those with the box awakening, are sometimes required to deal the full amount of health of a boss because everyone else is voided out. So let's look at this example here where I did not even use a gemstone, but I had that 3x3 box. Each Yusuke is hitting for basically 60 plus million damage, plus the sub attribute's about almost 18 million or so. So I'm basically hitting for 135 million. No, wait, math is hard. 65, 127 plus 18. Like, I'm hitting for like almost 140 million or so with ignoring damage voids. So that is quite meaningful. Now, if we basically didn't have the double 7 combo awakening, Yusuke's damage output would be basically 4 times less. And that is quite meaningful because that's why a lot of void damage penetration cards require you to actually have burst inherits as well as the bi-elemental board changer. Yusuke kind of solves all of them on his own. So unless the spawn you're fighting has hundreds and hundreds of millions of health, Yusuke will be doing enough damage to actually pierce through. So that is quite meaningful, and this is even further compounded by the fact that you can use any killer latent. So you can choose, say, you're fighting dragon spawns, which are generally the most common void damage spawns in the game, and you're dealing even more damage against them. So this flexibility and high personal damage output's great, and also because when you're using double Yusuke, you have 2 cards hitting that amount of damage. So again, your damage is even higher. Like Valentine's Day is another amazing option, but Yusuke might be a little easier because you get dual Yusukes, as well as Yusuke having a stronger active skill for this type of orb manipulation. Valentine's Day is a tri-elemental board changer, which is great because it has hearts, but less consistent overall for forming your box. So, team building for Yusuke. So, he has relatively gentle team building requirements because in theory, all you require is something with a light attribute, whether it's primary or sub attribute, because Yusuke already provides water on his own, so he has his own activation requirements. So, this is going to make it so it's quite easy for you to actually build a team, and you don't necessarily have to have all the top cards in the game to start clearing content. Like, I feel he's even easier than Dark Athena because he doesn't necessarily have the typing restriction associated with her. So you could even use like a different color attribute card and a light sub attribute, and that still technically works. May not necessarily be as great unless it's water, but I'll explain more of that in detail. So what awakenings do you want to try and pursue for your team? So Generally speaking, 7 combo is the way to go because 7 combos provides the most consistent and stable damage output as well as being the most efficient to do from a given board. Like forming 7 combos is almost always guaranteed from a given board unless you have a truly disastrous orb distribution or there's jammers and poisons, which is kind of hindering your overall chances of hitting 7 combos. But for the most part, it's 7 or 8 combos on average. So you always have that kind of activation. And in theory, yes, you do need water and yes, you do need light. But the thing is, if you're clearing 7 or more combos per turn, that's 21 plus orbs at the minimum, you are able to most likely guarantee yourself refreshing the board enough to actually have the 3 light and 3 water required for damage output. So you want to try and pursue cards with the 7 combo awakening. In addition to that, you pretty much always want to have a card with the follow-up attack awakening. Basically, it allows you to trivialize and dance around resolve spawns. It's become almost a mandatory nowadays when playing through endgame content. In regards to the void damage penetration, you don't necessarily need to have more on your team because dual Yusuke's should be providing enough potency or enough piercing to kill those spawns off. So I feel like you don't need to have those awakenings overall. But if you do have a card that has 7 combos, like another duplicate Yusuke, sure, you can use them for sure. Another thing to keep in mind is that recovery is more important than health. So Yusuke has 2.25 times health and recovery, which is great, and it's also unconditional. You're always having these multipliers, which is important. But the thing is, all you want to try and do with the health is try and survive the largest reasonable hit without needing a shield. So let's say there is a preemptive in a dungeon that's going to hit you for 60,000 damage, let's say hypothetically. Your goal is to try and hit 60,000 plus health. That way you can tank the hit, and then you want to have as much recovery left over as possible to basically sustain and heal yourself back up all the way. Now, having a gigantic health pool looks cool, but the thing is, if you can't heal and restore that health, it's not going to be doing much good for yourself. Because let's say you eat that 99% gravity, how are you going to heal yourself back up? And this is obviously a problem that is a bit more prevalent on Blue Sonya teams, mostly because Blue Sonya teams tend to have low recovery as a general rule. But Yusuke is able to have a much more balanced stat distribution as well as cards that he can bring. So I personally want to try and pursue as much recovery as possible while staying in the parameters of double 7 combo and the right colors. Now, a great example of this is comparing blue and light cotton. So both of them feature desirable awakenings. They have the follow-up attack and double 7 combo and a useful base active skill. However, their stat distribution is quite different. Now, blue cotton has 2,615 more health, but 847 less recovery. So on Yusuke teams with the 2.25 times multiplier, that is an effective 5,884 health or 1,906 recovery. So let's say you need that 5,800 health to survive that large preemptive or a large regular hit, then it's possibly worth pursuing blue cotton because that way you're able to survive that without requiring a shield. But on the flip side, let's say you did not need that 5,800 health. That 1,900 recovery is going to provide you so much healing potential, and it's worth putting light cotton over blue if you can survive the largest reasonable hit. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that RCV tends to be a little stronger in longer dungeons because you often find yourself needing to stall and dance out through spawns to recharge other active skills. So being able to heal more is enabling you to sustain through those spawns without actually having to waste extra active skills, or you can get an extra turn or two of stalling, which can make or break certain dungeon runs. In terms of solo mode badges to run, generally speaking, health or recovery is the most desirable. Again, just keep those above thoughts in mind because, well, if you can use the health badge to push your health up high enough without modifying your team composition, great. But if you need the recovery, take the recovery badge. Again, it's all based on a dungeon-to-dungeon basis as well as your own individual team composition. With that being said, some people may or may not need the time extend badge. So the time extend badge does not help your overall survivability outside of being able to combo more. So Yusuke only does have one time extend, which can be problematic. Like let's say you have Yusuke, you have Ideal, you don't have any Yunas or any other big fat time extend stick cards. You might find yourself with not enough movement time. Again, some people might say this is a player skill issue, but if you have so little movement time, it might be worth taking, provided you don't need the health or recovery, but I would still strongly lean towards health and recovery. So, notable cards to run. So, Yusuke is naturally a strong sub on his own team because he's got the Great Active, the Great Awakenings, and it's basically all you really want outside of slightly lower weighted stats. But with that in mind, he's going to address a lot of problems, and having an extra on your team is obviously amazing when you fight those void damage spawns. Next is Sharius Roots. Again, this is kind of in a random order. I have a master copy icon list for all, a master copy paste list for all of my icons, and I just kind of scroll through it and just pick them out in order I find them. So again, order is random. It's not necessarily reflective of what's best or what's worse. So Sharius Roots is a situationally powerful card to have. Like, he does have more value on Edward teams because it's giving you that dark sub attribute where Edward needs for his skill charge awakening. But Sharius Roots does have some killers, but he also does have guard break. Now, guard break may or may not be needed on Yusuke teams because, again, you have that higher multiplier, and it might be challenging to incorporate cards with all of those attributes because yes, Sharius Roots provides purple, but you still need to find a red, you still need to find a green card. So it may or may not be as feasible to stick in guard break or activate guard break, and if you can't activate guard break, it may not be worth running Sharius Roots unless you're fighting a spawn where his killers are effective against. Edward is another powerful sub for Yusuke teams because his active skill is great synergy. It's a burst active skill that removes hazards as well as converting hearts into light as well as a full heal. So that full heal can be quite meaningful. If your Yusuke team has like 80,000 health and you got hit by 99% gravity, Edward's full heal can be pretty useful overall. But the biggest drawback is that Edward has a very long cooldown, and that is definitely compensated by a skill charge awakening. But again, if you can't incorporate rainbow color coverage, which may or may not be possible, it might be too hard to actually bring Edward as a sub because you're going to be waiting 20 turns otherwise for his active skill. Next is Odin Dragon, and Odin Dragon is essentially the king of bind and awoken bind clearing, but unfortunately he is offering a little less overall for the team. Now, this is because, like, yes, he does have the light sub attribute, so he does gain the full multipliers, but the problem is with his wood primary attribute, he's missing out on a lot of damage potentially because you might be using orb changers or board changers that don't produce wood orbs, which is quite common. Like, Yusuke's base active will not help Odin Dragon out, so that can make for a little bit of a problematic scenario. Now, with that in mind, Odin Dragon is somewhat mandatory when playing through content like Arena, Alt Arena, where there's tons of awoken binds as well as binds, and even Arena 4, Odin Dragon is just quite an amazing sub to have overall. So just bear in mind that he's going to be contributing the least amount possibly in your team because of the wood primary attribute as well as only a single 7 combo awakening. However, he does have massive amounts of RCV, so that can help solve some healing issues. And one thing I do want to stress is that by using a card without water or light primary attribute, you are missing out on lots of damage, so think carefully before you put them on your team, and they have to be able to offer enough to justify the fact that they are contributing less overall. Amatsu is often considered one of the best follow-up attack options in the game because of his gigantic amount of weighted stats as well as 9,000 base health. So that is quite meaningful, but the only drawback of Amatsu on Yusuke teams is that their active skill is a little more redundant compared to other teams. This is fine nitpicking overall because Amatsu can unlock orbs, but Yusuke can also unlock orbs, so it's a little less potent overall. But then again, Amatsu is still such a great card to run on your team, and his recovery bind awakening can act as a pseudo bind clearing after you form a row of hard orbs. Again, he just brings lots of flexibility into the team. Blue Cotton is basically considered like a budget Amatsu, but Blue Cotton has the advantage of having a shorter base cooldown, so it's easier to inherit something over top of her. But again, she just has less weighted stats overall, so she's not as amazing. Now, just remember that Amatsu and Blue Cotton have low recovery, but are more heavily skewed towards health. So again, just keep in mind that do you have enough recovery to sustain yourself? And that's why Light Cotton may or may not be a better option than those two if you need more healing for a follow-up attack option. Furthermore, Light Cotton is able to actually equip stronger killer latents, like she can use dragon killers, which are quite desirable for the most part. So again, it's personal preference of what you find is best. Paimon is another HP heavy oriented sub. Like, he has a large amount of health, and he also has 4 light orb enhance awakening, so he's going to be providing additional damage to every other card on your team, but he himself will not be hitting very hard because he has no 7 combo awakening. Furthermore, his base active skill has a chance to override water orbs and thus break your activation requirements. So that can be a bit of a risk, but at least it's a 7-turn cooldown, so it is able to inherit over top. But just remember that he is heavily weighted towards health, and his active skill can break your activation. DQXQ is most likely better off as an inherit because she has no offensive awakenings that have synergy with Yusuke teams, but her active skill basically forms light and hard orbs as well as a 10,000 heal, which is kind of cool, but it also gives you hazards to water. So in theory, if you have jammers and poisons on the board, you will have light, hearts, and water orbs present. Pretty useful overall. It's a short 8-turn cooldown, reasonably good to inherit around, and I might be making some changes to my team to incorporate a DQXQ inherit. Blue Valkyrie has a 7 combo, and they also have guard break, but the same problems as Sharia's Roots is that it may be harder to trigger that guard break, but Blue Valkyrie is prettier, as well as having more consistent damage output and a shorter and possibly more useful base active skill, so it's easier to inherit over top. So she is definitely an option overall. Apollo may be able to perform reasonably well, but the problem is no 7 combo awakening does hurt his overall damage output, and his base active skill might overflow the board of light orbs, which might make it harder to make 7 combos. Again, that's not always the case, but the 2 turns of light skyfalls definitely do promote significantly higher damage output. But just remember that his super awakenings can give a void damage penetration, but that is a little redundant because Yusuke does that better. Reincarnated Indra. So Reincarnated Indra is mostly an incredible inherit, but if you are playing through solo mode, you can unlock his 7 combo awakening through his super awakening. So he does have the chance to deal more meaningful damage, but the main draw of using Indra as a sub is you tap into that massive health as well as having that powerful shield on a much shorter cooldown because it's not inherited anywhere. So you have that nice 75% damage reduction shield on a much more consistent basis, so can be worth considering. Diao Chan is a situational sub, but a lot of her relevancy has been lost in the sense that because her main appeal was the orb unlocking aspect, but that is redundant on Yusuke teams. So you are going to be most likely inheriting something over top of her and then just kind of abusing that 1 turn, every other turn of like orb unlock plus time extend buff. So that time extend buff can override debuff, so it can be helpful in certain situations, but Diao Chan has a little less meaning because the orb unlocking is more redundant. Why is Karen here? I have no idea. That should not be there. But Orochi may be better off as an on-color inherit for a water-based card because the TPAs don't have as much synergy for the most part because you are essentially losing out on a lot of damage. If you're forming TPAs, you might possibly lose out on 1 7 combo. Like instead of having 7 combos, you might make 6. So Orochi's not providing much outside of massive amounts of health, so that may or may not be needed, but at least the light sub attribute can provide him with the stats needed. But I honestly feel that Orochi is a better off inherit for the most part. Orpherean is a farmable solution, and he does come with 3 skill boosts and potentially 4 of a super awakening, so it can help charge up active skills faster. He does have strong weighted stats, so he's not a terrible card to bring into a dungeon. Might be better than Whaledor if you're really desperate, like if you can use 4 instead of 5 skill boosts. But again, it's a farmable solution, so we can't really complain too much about Orpherean. Light Knight can be a workable sub, but again, her board changer base skill is not helpful. It's producing light, dark, and heal orbs, which is not going to help Yusuke's activation, so that is a bit of a drawback. But the thing is that double TPA can be helpful because let's say you're facing a spawn with high defense. You form obviously your 7+ combos, but you make light TPAs if possible. It might allow Light Knight to pierce through, and it can be a very workable solution if you don't have a 777 combo awakening card, but just remember that she does not have a valuable base active skill. Ideal is arguably the strongest sub in the game because she has 777 combo, she has huge weighted stats, she has like a gigantic amount of recovery, she provides team health, as well as having a useful base active because it's a delay with a board changer. So Ideal is arguably one of the more ideal cards to run on Yusuke teams. You never really can go wrong with her. But just bear in mind that Ideal does not have any time extend, so you might run into the issue of not enough movement time, but again, that's very small nitpicking, and if you have something like Yuna, you solve that problem. So again, Ideal and Yuna solve a lot of the healing issues for Yusuke teams because they provide so much recovery. So Yuna is kind of like Ideal in the sense that there's a large stat heavily skewed towards recovery, but she has 4 time extend awakening. So that's 2 seconds of movement time. That solves your movement time problem. That solves your healing potential problems. She has double 7 combo awakening, so she does provide useful damage. She also has the ability to equip dragon killers, so does Ideal. But she does have what I feel is a bit of a stronger base active skill, because her active skill is allowing you to have 2 turns of 50% damage reduction with a turn of haste. Quite strong value. It allows you to actually have your shielding come up more often and more consistent, but just remember that Yuna does have low health and she only provides a single skill boost. Kronus is one card to possibly consider that's not water or light primary attribute if you lack other strong options, because he has 777 combo awakening, and with 777 combo awakening he's able to deal very meaningful amounts of damage provided you actually match wood orbs, which can be a bit of a hurdle or problem overall, but in all honesty, if you're not using Yusuke's base active, Kronus might be a useful sub to bring, but just remember his base active does not help the team. It produces a board that does not have light. Well, it does have light, but it doesn't have water orbs and causes no skyfalls, so it's never going to happen. Tachibana is another double 7 combo awakening card that comes with a useful 5 elemental board changer, so you all have activation as well as a 75% damage reduction shield. So that is quite powerful because you can tank hits as well as fix a bad board. Now, the only problem is it's not a reliable enough board changer for a follow-up attack. Follow-up attack requires 5 hard orbs, and Tachibana has a very high likelihood of not producing 5 hard orbs, so you may not be able to follow-up attack after using Tachibana's active skill, which can be problematic. But one thing to keep in mind is that Tachibana in her unevolved form provides +2 combo count, which enables you to basically achieve the 3x3 box with 7 combos more easily. Nene is a card that you may consider as a sub if you lack other options, but she is primarily going to be used as an inherit because she is one of 3 cards that produce light, water, and heart orbs. So that is very meaningful because you can have pretty much guaranteed 5 heart orbs for the follow-up attack. You have big combos and also the ability to heal up, so you can deal damage and heal. So incredibly powerful. But Nene herself does not have any offensive awakenings, which makes it tougher to justify using her as a sub. So with that in mind, she is most likely better off in her unevolved form because her unevolved form gives you +2 combo counts as a delicious inherit, so again, helps you achieve that 3x3 box. Eighth has 777 combo as well as having an appropriate primary attribute. So she's going to be dealing spectacular amounts of damage on your team. Like if you look scroll up to the above screenshots, you can see just how much damage she's actually pumping out. And that is quite meaningful because she's going to help you punch through high defense spawns as well as providing massive amounts of damage if you had a board, especially with more water orbs on it. Now, the only drawback of Eighth is that against wood spawns, she does lose out on her advantage because she gets her damage halved, as that may be problematic because in Alt Arena and Arena 4, there are high defense spawns that are both ironically wood. So Eighth has to hit even harder to pierce through like those 15 or so million defense of those 2 spawns. And that can be a bit of a drawback. And that's why something like Ideal is more ideal because it's not resisted by comparison. Beach Tachibana has the same board changer as her Rare Machine cousin, but she provides the +2 combo count instead of the shields while having 777 combo as well as strong awakenings. Can be something to consider if you're fortunate enough to have her. That +2 combo count definitely makes activation, especially the 3x3 box, significantly easier. New Year's Yomi functions similarly to Yuna in that it's a time extend card along with 777 combo, but the main drawback of New Year's Yomi is that they do not have a very strong base active skill. Yuna is much more powerful because a shield is much better than an orb enhance plus time buff. So if I had the choice between Yuna or New Year's Yomi, I would most likely choose Yuna unless I need that dark sub-attribute. But just remember, Yuna with the water sub-attribute is contributing meaningful amounts of damage. If you scroll up again, you can see that Yuna's sub-attribute is hitting reasonably hard. Navi does gain a second 7 combo awakening through her super awakening, so she can be a useful or situational card to run on your solo teams, but she will definitely be replaced and kind of forgotten if you're playing a co-op because super awakenings are disabled, as well as the fact that 4 SBRs are just redundant and it just takes up a lot of awakening slots. Erica can be a situational card, like it does have 777 combo as well as healer and attacker killers, which makes the Metatrons much easier to deal with. But again, the base active skill does not help your team, so it may be a little harder to justify using Erica as a sub. And last but not least is Amino. So Amino is the second of 3 cards that have the tri-elemental board changer of Water, Hearts, and Light. But unfortunately, Amino has no offensive awakenings of his own, and he will most likely be used as an inherit instead. There's a dog outside, apparently. Woof. So, notable inherits and latents. So, basically, once you've settled on your potential team, what you need to do is determine your inherits and latents. So, again, there is no perfect or ideal setup. You need to basically just modify and adjust on a dungeon-by-dungeon basis. So, with knowing nothing about the type of content you are playing through, it is useful to have inherits that bring a delay, an orb or board changer that makes hearts, as well as a situational burst, and possibly even a +2 combo count, which should be there. I'm not sure why it's not showing. But the general idea is that with a delay, you're able to dance around problematic spawns. You could wait out problematic absorbs or voids if they're short enough. You can also take the time to set up and heal up, or even just recharge other active skills. Furthermore, at this point in time, we're starting to see more and more spawns that are dangerous, but that can be delayed. So think of like the Norns and Metatrons in Alt Arena as well as Arena 4. You can delay them and buy yourself extra time. So that can be meaningful. Again, you may not necessarily need the delay all the time, but it's good to have as an option if it's going to help you perform better. Now, Water, Light, and Heart or board changers. So Yusuke's base active skill already provides you with a wonderful board changer that does massive amounts of damage. But the drawback is it doesn't actually produce heart orbs, so you can't form a follow-up attack alongside of it. So at this point in time, there are 3 cards, Amino, Nene, and Barioth from Monster Hunter. And of those 3, Amino is the weakest because their secondary effect is the least helpful overall. So Nene can either provide a modest bind clearing, which is not that great, or +2 combo count. So Nene with +2 combo count as an inherit is fantastic. You're going to be able to easily hit that 7+ combos even while forming your 3x3 box, which is important. And then Barioth may possibly be the strongest option because Barioth can gain a weapon assist evolution. And from there, it allows him to provide 400 recovery. And that is huge because now you can transform a card into a much bigger RCV stick while having the great active skill alongside of it. So for instance, if you put Barioth on Cotton, or especially Blue Cotton, you're going to get the stat transfer from Barioth as well as 400 bonus recovery. So that's going to push Blue Cotton up significantly higher and helps address the healing issues while still having the massive amount of health alongside of it. So this can be definitely very valuable and it makes a big difference. Now, finally, having a burst inherit may or may not always be required because Yusuke teams tend to do enough damage overall just because, well, you just have so much damage of 225 times along with the fact that Yusuke's board changer allows you to deal massive amounts of damage because you're going to be flooded with light and water orbs. One sec, just change something there really quick. And then we're going to continue down and just kind of look at Yusuke's own personal inherits and latents. So Yusuke already has an incredible base active skill. You don't necessarily want to override it because it's providing a lot of solutions. Board changer, burst damage, orb unlocking. And with that in mind, you just want to transfer stats over to him because extra stats are always helpful and meaningful. And to do so, we want to obviously pick some of high stats, that's light attribute, as well as having a long base cooldown so it doesn't actually accidentally charge up and ruin your activation potential. So with that in mind, Zeus Verse is possibly the most universal and possibly one of the more desirable cards to inherit over top. And that is because he is farmable, so it is accessible. He has high stats, as well as having a 50 turn base cooldown when unskilled, which is nice because you don't want to skill it up because it's quite expensive. So Yusuke can now gain from this following picture potentially 50 turns skill delay protection. Huge. And that allows you to equip Dragon Killer Latents more safely without using SDRs because you can have Yusuke overcharge, like basically hit the 13 turns and go beyond it. Then you can hit delays and not actually have yourself delayed. So that makes a big difference. But again, Dragon Killers are usually the default answer for something like Arena 4 because the hardest spawn is the Dragon Callers that have a damage void at the same time. So Yusuke does solve those with Dragon Killers, but again, if you don't have Dragon Killers or you're using them for other certain scenarios, you can take SDRs as a good default or even other killers depending on what type of dungeon you are playing through. So this is the current Yusuke team I've been using for Arena 4 in solo mode, I modified a bit in co-op because things are a little easier for the most part. But generally speaking, I'm bringing a +2 combo count, I'm bringing a bind and awoken bind clearing solution, as well as a shield, and I do have a carrot inherited on my 8th, but I may or may not want to keep it. Like, I sometimes need it, I usually don't, but it does help prevent spawns like Wallace when you have bad board distributions, as well as the fact that he has 75% damage reduction and he has 80 million health, so he effectively has 320, which might make it hard for 2 Yusuke's alone to pierce through, so Carrot does help with that. It can also help pierce through the 30 million defense jewels, which are quite annoying, especially when you get double jewel spawns, so again, Carrot is situational. I may or may not change her out, but I'm using this team right now, and it's quite stable and consistent unless something terrible happens. But basically, the idea is I have Odin Dragon with a green Odin assist, so it gets more stats and auto healing, which can be nice. I have +2 combo count on the Cotton. I have the Carrot, which I may or may not keep. And then Yuna has Indra because that shield is a great get out of jail free card. I pop the shield, nothing really kills me for the most part. And then both Yusuke's usually have just a Zeus verse and triple Dragon Killer Latents. So for the most part, I do have solutions to basically all the spawns. I can dance through most things. If in desperate need, I can use Yuna to shield and survive. Odin Dragon can be a heal and a clutch. So there's lots of protection for the most part on this team. Now, one last thing to keep in mind is that when you're arranging your subs, try and place any sub of a water sub attribute on the rightmost side, because your team attacks left to right primary, then sub attributes. So initially, I'll have all the primary attributes. They'll be light, green, light, water, light, light. And then all the sub-attributes. So water, light, 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 water, water. And that's important because if there is a light absorb, you are still able to potentially kill the spawn because your partner's Yusuke and any sub of a water sub-attribute will be dealing damage as the last hits. And that might be enough to kill those absorb spawns. So for instance, those puppeteers in Arena 4, they do have a light and dark absorb, but if I hit a board with enough water combos, I will be able to possibly kill them off without actually having to dance through those 5 turns because the water attributes are hitting as the final blow. Something small, but something worth to keep in mind. So, in conclusion, Yusuke is an incredible card to own. Like, he has amazing leadership potential. He's a great sub on his own team as well as other teams, and he's also quite easily accessible. And for the most part, Yusuke alone does provide enough damage. Like, from the above example, he's hitting 5+ million damage with just 7 combos with his regular activation. So that can sweep a lot of content because double Yusuke is 10 million damage. So it can trivialize lots of spawns. But then, of course, when you have obviously a more ideal subs, your team is performing significantly better. Now, he can definitely tackle any endgame content currently available. So Alt Arena, Arena 4, 3-player Dragon Rush, he can definitely address and tackle all those dungeons with relative ease, so to speak. So he is worth pursuing, and if you do have him, it's worth your time, effort, and investment because he's going to take you to the next level, so to speak. So let me know what you use on your Yusuke team and what kind of content are you currently playing through with him. Hopefully you all have a fantastic day. Wish you all the best of luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.